Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. What an exciting day today. We are finally going to be able to plant our new raised bed garden that we started all the way last fall.
And we say finally because it seems like we've been waiting a long time. We're not late in planting. In fact, we're actually earlier than we've ever planted this area before. But we've been looking forward to this day since last September when we built these raised beds. So today is a very exciting day for us.
Now, we did plant a few things a couple weeks ago. We brought you guys along for that, some kind of early plants. But today, we're going to get the entire rest of the garden planted with our actual summer garden plants. Now, like Sarah said, this is the earliest we've ever been able to plant a garden here in Missouri. And you guys, that's really because we've switched over to the raised bed gardens. When we were gardening in the ground, it seemed like every year, just about the time, like right now when it would be perfect for planting, we would get just a ton of rain that would make it impossible to plant.
Well, it is a beautiful day for the moment. We've had 2 days and will be a total of 2.5 days of nice weather in the middle, kind of sandwiched between long stretches of rain.
It is a gorgeous day here in the Ozarks. We are so grateful that we have finally had a dry, warm week. It just seemed like it was never going to end. So we've got a lot of work to accomplish. We're hoping to get it all done today because tomorrow some rain moves back in.
With that amount of rain, the soil would get just too saturated and muddy, and we would have to just wait and wait and wait. And some years we had to wait until almost June to plant our in-ground garden. But because we now have raised beds in this area, we don't really have to worry about that because the drainage in these raised beds is so good.
Right. And this year would have been no exception because you guys, in the last 4 days, we have gotten 5.5 inches of rain. Had we still been gardening in the ground, this would have been, there's no way. The ground right now is so soft and squishy. If this would have been freshly tilled soil here, we would have had to wait at least a couple weeks probably for everything to dry back out enough for us to be able to plant.
So that was really one of the main reasons why we switched over from planting in the ground to planting in raised beds.
So let's walk inside the garden. We'll review quickly with you guys the raised beds that we're using, what we have them filled up with, and to give you a quick update on the plants that we planted a couple weeks ago. Now last fall we installed 21 of these metal raised bed gardens. These are from a company called Vajaga. We did a lot of research into which raised bed would be the absolute best for us here. And after doing all of our research, we came to the conclusion that these Vajaga raised beds would be the absolute best. We'll leave a link in the description so you guys can go check these out for yourself. But you guys, these are supposed to have about a 25-year lifespan, which I'm really excited about. There are other metal raised beds out there as well, but when we really looked at what they were using to coat the metal with, you guys, the Vajaga ones just came out on top every time we did a comparison. These beds are 8 feet long, 2 feet wide, and 17 inches deep. We put down the woven weed fabric underneath them. We did not cut out underneath these, so we are going to be planting right on top of the weed fabric. 17 inches of soil is plenty for any of the garden plants that we're going to be planting. They don't need to root down any more than 17 inches. And by having the fabric underneath, we eliminate the chance of weeds growing up from the bottom. Now the reason that we did all of this last fall is because we filled these beds with 100% organic compost that we got delivered in bulk. We weren't sure if it was completely done composting yet. It may still be what they call hot, So we wanted to leave it sit over the winter so that we made sure by the time we get ready to plant our plants this spring, it's completely done composting and it would be safe for the plants.
Well, I want to give you guys just a quick update on how well the things are doing that we've already planted in here. You guys came along for that little planting session. And I also want to draw your attention to really how great these look as far as just having 5.5 inches of rain. You guys, we still have standing water other places on the homestead. We've got rushing creeks everywhere, bridges like closed and washed out because of so much rain in such a small amount of time. But these raised beds have done amazing. Now in this raised bed, and actually the one right behind me, we planted onions. Now we started these from little onion starts that we bought at a local Amish greenhouse nursery, and the variety is called Candy. And they have grown very tall and have quite a few new leaves in both of these raised beds. Now, one thing that we did not bring you along for planting that is just starting to come up, we did this maybe a week afterwards, we planted dill seed in this garden here, and only one of them has germinated so far, but it's still within the right time frame of how long it's going to take to germinate. I know that these are going to just pop up any day now, but we do have one whole raised bed dedicated to growing dill because we love dill in fresh pickles, canned pickles, and just a lot of other dishes throughout the summer. And all 6 of these back raised beds here, we planted together on that early planting video. Kevin planted mustard seed here because he wants to allow it to bolt, go to flower, turn into seed, and then use those seeds to make homemade mustard for the first time ever. Next to it, on these 2 raised beds, we planted asparagus. You can see that these tiny little asparagus spears have already started growing, just like this. They're so thin, they're not even as wide as a pencil. This bed and this bed will both have asparagus growing. They are perennial, so they'll come back year after year. This year and probably next year, we will just allow the spears to grow up just like this and get really bushy throughout the growing year, and in the fall we'll cut them back. That will really allow their root system to grow and mature before we start harvesting asparagus to eat. And then behind here in these 3 raised beds, we have strawberry plants. This is really the first time I've ever really seriously tried to grow strawberries. And 3 of these raised beds, we'll see what this does this year and next year to determine if I want to expand or if these 3 raised beds is just enough strawberries for us and our family. So those are the raised beds that we've already planted, but today we are going to plant the rest of this garden for summer. Like we said before, we're super excited, so let's get started.
Before we get started actually planting, we have a little bit of work to do. What we're going to do is we are going to be building some arched trellises between these 2 rows of beds. So there's going to be 3 arches between these beds, and those beds. And we're going to be building these out of cattle panels and T-posts. We threw around a lot of different ways that we could do this. We were thinking about it throughout the winter. Originally, we thought we'd be able to just take the cattle panels, put them, in between the 2 beds and arch them up and over. But the more we thought about it, we were afraid that over time, the spring from the cattle panels might kind of distort the raised beds a little bit. And we're afraid that they will scratch the coating off of the raised bed and potentially make them rust. So we decided not to do that. Instead, what we decided to do is we're going to put 2 T-posts in the center of each one of these beds, about 40 inches apart. And then we're going to hoop these up and over from the center of this bed to the center of this bed. That's the same width as what we make our hoop coops. Our hoop coops end up being about 6 feet tall at the center. So these should end up being about 7.5 feet tall at the center because we're already starting about 17 inches off the ground. So I think it's going to make a really nice trellis. So far it's all just in our heads. So we're going to do one first and then we'll decide if that's the way we want to go with all of them. But I think it's going to work out just fine. Now, if you decide that you want to do something like this, but you don't want to have to make your own, Vajaga, the company that makes the raised beds, they do sell arches that go with these raised beds. There's two reasons that we didn't go with those. One, we had our spacing wrong. The arches that they sell require the beds to be 4 feet apart. We have our beds 5 feet apart. The other thing is we already had cattle panels and T-posts here. We've used those in the past to build arches, and they always work out really well. They're good and strong, and we think that it's going to work out just as well today. We've got our 4 T-posts in for these first 2 beds. Now, like I said, so far all of this has just been in our head, so we're hoping that this is going to work. It's not going to be super easy to put these cattle panels up. It's just different because we're not going down to the actual ground. We have to be on top of these raised beds. So we're going to just do our best. It might be kind of awkward, but I think we'll be able to get it done. All right, we're going to grab a cattle panel and
we're just gonna have to muscle it into place.
yeah, we're gonna have to wing it and see what we can do.
I think that's gonna be super nice.
I think so too. The height is like perfect.
I agree. Just like this.
I know. Well, look at that, you guys. That turned out, I would say, exactly like I had pictured in my head, except I think even a little better, even sturdier, I think. We were able to, put these T-posts in so that they're about a foot into the actual ground, and then the 17 inches of soil here. And then we just used some T-post clips to put 2 clips on each post, and it really made a nice sturdy arch. This is gonna work out great. I can't wait to show you guys what we have planned to grow on these. But first, we have 2 more of these to build so that this whole row right here is arches.
Well, all 3 of our arched trellises are in, They look fantastic. This was a great plan. We've been thinking about it for a long time, and the execution was exactly what we were hoping for. Now, this is super exciting to have these, but it's even more exciting to be able to plant what we have planned in these 6 raised bed gardens. And we're gonna start planting them first because we just did the arches. We are really excited to get these plants in. Now I wanna share with you our master plan, okay? So in these 3 gardens here, we are gonna be planting green beans, a pole bean variety, which hopefully will climb up this trellis, maybe all the way up to the top. Maybe it'll start climbing around the other side. We don't know yet, but we're excited. The variety is called Old Homestead, but it's also sometimes called Kentucky Wonder pole beans. So all 3 of these raised beds here are going to have beans. Now, the thought process for that reasoning is our really intense western sun, afternoon sun, comes from this direction. And we really feel like those green beans are going to do well in that hot sun, and they are going to help shade what is over on this side of the arch trellises. And this is what we have planned, okay? We have 2 varieties of tomatoes going in this raised bed. There's going to be one that is indeterminate that's going to climb. We're going to prune them so that they'll be single stemmed and grow up here. And that variety in this raised bed will be those spoon tomatoes, those teeny tiny tomatoes that you all have been recommending to us for the last year basically. And actually one of our subscribers sent us the seeds that we planted in the sprout house a couple months ago. They are going to be growing here. Now on either side of them, we have a new variety that we're going to be planting that is recommended by Luke from MI Gardener called Geranium Kiss. They are a determinate type of tomato, so they're not going to get really tall. They're going to stay kind of low here and get kind of bushy. So we are going to have 1 Geranium Kiss on each end, and then I think we're planting 3 of the spoon tomatoes to climb up here. So that is raised bed number 1 over here. In the middle, we are going to be planting 2 different varieties of cucumbers. One will be the Market More 76 that we have planted for years and years and years, and the other one will be the Bait Alpha. So they're both kind of longer. They're not pickling cucumbers like we planted in the greenhouse, but the Market More is longer. The Bait Alpha is shorter, and so we're going to grow a couple of each of the vines up around here. I haven't exactly thought of what I'm going to plant over on each side here of this raised bed, but I think I might have some extra flowers which will brighten up this area. I'll keep thinking about that and I might plant them later. And then in the last arched trellis raised bed garden are going to be 2 more varieties of tomatoes, kind of the similar style or similar layout as the other one. We are going to be planting the Juliet grape tomatoes up the trellis here because they are indeterminate and will climb. We'll also make these each a single stem, and then on each side, just like the other raised bed, we're going to have the Geranium Kiss. So that is the plan for these arched trellises and these raised beds. We're going to get planting. The tomato plants are going to be almost like instant gratification because we are planting little seedlings. The beans and the cucumbers, they're from seeds, so we're going to have to wait a week or so. But we are very excited to get started.
We're ready to start planting the spoon tomatoes. Now, if you're not familiar with spoon tomatoes, they are a tiny, tiny tomato about the size of a blueberry. Last year in the greenhouse, I thought I was growing what was supposed to be considered the world's smallest tomatoes. They were called Tiny Toms or something like that. I bought the seeds on Etsy from someone who had really good reviews, so I'm not blaming that person. But I don't think the seeds that I received were actually of that variety. They ended up being, maybe the size of a marble, which by was no means the world's smallest tomato. So after that experiment, one of our subscribers sent me seeds for a variety called spoon tomatoes. And I looked them up online. They look very intriguing. And since it was a pack from an actual seed shop, I think they are going to be exactly what they're supposed to be. So I'm going to try those this year out here in hopes that these will be more like what I thought I was growing last year. So you can see we've got our plants here. We started these probably about 6 or 8 weeks ago. They're doing pretty good, but I think they're going to do a lot better once we get them planted here. I'm going to just dig a hole down in here. There's no big secret on how to plant tomato plants. If you've watched us in past years, we always plant our tomato plants with some rabbit manure down in the hole. This year we're not doing that because we're planting in pure compost, and we just don't really think that there's going to be a need for that added rabbit manure in here. So we're just going to bury this about like that. I might come back. In fact, I can just do it now. Take off a couple of these very lower branches here. We don't want branches down into the soil, so we'll just take those off. Now it can start growing up. As it starts to grow up this trellis, then we will attach it to these vertical bars as it's growing up. We'll just do that for all of these until they get all the way to the top of the arch. Now that the spoon tomatoes are planted, we're going to put the geranium kiss tomatoes on each side. The geranium kiss are what I would call like an extra large cherry tomato. They're about the size of a golf ball, and they're supposed to be super prolific. The reason we picked this variety for these areas on both sides of the trellis, though, is because these are a determinate tomato plant, which means they don't grow super tall. And in fact, these are considered a dwarf determinate, which means they won't even grow as tall as a normal determinate. It says that they should get about 24 to 30 inches tall and grow more like a bush. But it also says that the tomatoes are so prolific that you'll literally be picking them every day once they start to ripen. So I'm excited about that. Now, if you didn't see the video where we planted our greenhouse, you'll have to go back and watch that as well, because these aren't by any means the only tomatoes we're planting this year. We planted about 28 or 30 tomato plants in the greenhouse as well. So we're going to be having lots of tomatoes this summer, which, as you know, is just fine with me. All right, so we've got that in. I'm going to do the one on the other end. Then Sarah and I will work together, and we're going to get all the rest of these raised beds planted.
The tomatoes and the cucumbers are planted. Now we're moving on to the pole beans. Kevin and I are both going to work together to get these planted. Again, these are old homestead pole beans. They're also called Kentucky Wonder pole beans. We're just going to plant these a ½ inch to an inch under the ground, about every 6 inches.
Next up, we're going to be planting these two beds right here, and these we're going to be planting with okra. Now, last year I did some experimenting with different varieties of okra, because the type that we have traditionally grown, which is called Clemson spineless, grows very, very tall. And I knew that if we were going to be switching over to raised beds, we would need to find an alternative, because if we planted Clemson spineless in these raised beds starting already 17 inches off the ground, there's no way I could reach the tops of them. So I found a variety last year, an heirloom variety that I really enjoyed growing, and they grew, I think, a lot like the Clemson spineless. This is one of the pods that I saved from last year, and this is what we're going to be getting our seeds out of for this year. These were called Dwarf Green Long Pod, and you can see it's a good size okra, but the plants only grew maybe about 4 or 5 feet tall, which I think will be doable even in these beds. So that's exciting. I'm going to plant 3 plants per bed, so we'll have 6 plants total. I'm the only one in our family that likes okra, so we don't need to plant a whole lot. 6 okra plants for just me. is plenty. I'm going to plant 2 seeds in each hole just to make sure we get good germination. We can always come back later and thin them out. If you've never seen okra seeds before, this is what they look like. They're just inside of these pods. I'm sure you can hear them rattling around in there. There's probably 100 or more seeds inside of each pod. So if you save back 1 pod each year and let it dry on the plant at the end of the year, you'll have plenty of seed for the following year. So I'm going to take some of these seeds out. And again, we want 3 plants per pot. So I'm going to take 2 seeds. I'm going to put them just about a couple inches away from each of these drip or irrigation emitters. I'm going to put them down about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, and that's all we have to do. Let me know if you guys know of any other dwarf varieties. I'm always looking for new things to try every year. All right, that's it for okra. Hopefully in no time I'll be out here picking some.
The next thing that we're going to be planting in these raised beds is something that Kevin and I have been talking about planting for probably 8 years and just have never done it. And that is peanuts. The variety we're going to be planting are the Virginia peanuts from M.I. Gardner. Now, the reason why we've never planted peanuts before is because they require ground that has like a ton of drainage. And our soil in the ground has so much clay that we just don't have enough drainage to grow peanuts. So this year we're going to try for the very first time in one of these raised beds. It's going to be a learning experience for us. We're hoping for a great harvest. We know that one raised bed isn't going to produce like a whole year of peanuts for us, but it's going to be a great experience, and maybe we'll enjoy it so much that we'll expand and grow a lot more next year. Who knows? Now, we are going to be growing just one row of them here in the raised bed garden. You can plant these about every 6 inches, and you need to plant the seeds relatively deeply, about 2 inches. So I think we've got enough seed to do this one raised bed, and that's going to be really exciting. Oh, they actually still come in their shells. So this is what they're going to look like if we get a good harvest. And it looks like inside of here are 2 of the peanuts. Now, I have read that it's important to plant the peanuts that still have like the paper on the seeds. So hopefully I can get some of these out without breaking them all in half like that one, and keep the papery part on them. So there's one. I'm just going to start laying these out where I'm going to plant them eventually, but I want to make sure that I can get enough of them out with the paper on them to plant.
We're on to the final 3 beds. This whole row here are going to be different varieties of squash. This bed over here is going to be kind of your classic zucchini. We're going to do the Black Beauty zucchini. I think we can do 3 plants in this bed. That's a little closer together than they recommend, but I think it'll be okay. In this middle bed, we're going to be doing a variety that we did last year that we really enjoyed, called lemon squash. These, if you haven't seen them, they look like a lemon. They're bright yellow. They're a summer squash, so you eat them fresh. We actually just like them sliced up and then eat them with a little bit of like Italian dressing or something like that. Super good, but you can also roast them. You can put them in stir fries. Really, really good. Again, they look exactly like a lemon. And then down on the other end here, we're going to be doing scallop squash. I think we tried these once a long time ago, but it was in some pretty bad ground, so I don't think we gave them a fair shot. We did buy some last year at the farmer's market from another local farmer and really enjoyed them. So we thought this year we'd just try growing them ourselves. These are kind of a flat squash. They're not really big. They're probably about 4 inches across. And again, these are just like the lemon squash where you eat them fresh. So I think we can put 3 plants of each of these, and that should be a lot of squash for fresh eating.
Now, summer squash seeds like this are very easy to plant. We are going to put them about 1/2 inch underneath the soil, maybe an inch. We're both going to be putting 2 seeds per hole just to make sure we get good germination, and then later on we'll take out one of them if they both germinate. And because the plants on these kinds of summer squash, they get pretty big, we're only going to be planting 3 plants per raised bed.
The garden is entirely planted. You guys, this is so exciting. We are so ready for this raised bed garden this year. It's going to be such a game changer over how we've been gardening for the last few years.
And I cannot wait to see all of these plants just bursting out of these raised bed gardens. It's going to be such a sight, and I'm looking forward to that.
And what a blessing to have this done kind of ahead of time this year. We didn't have to wait for all of the ground to dry out. And you guys, as we talked about in the last video, my dad will be going in for open heart surgery next week. This means we have this all set, it's ready to go, and then I don't have to worry about things like the garden while I need to be spending time with my mom and dad. We can just focus on getting dad better and getting him back home.
If you guys are interested in learning more about these Vajayga raised beds, make sure that you take a look at the link that's in the description of this video. Also, most of the seeds that we used today were from M.I. Gardener. Luke and his wife have an amazing store, an amazing website where they sell really great seeds, so check them out as well.
Yeah, M.I. Gardener really is our go-to seed company these days. We've just had really good luck in the last couple of years that we've been using them. Great germination, and just always, they're always open to answering questions if you have questions about certain varieties.
Right, and they have really a lot of the classic things that we're looking for to grow in the garden. Things, tried and true varieties, we can always find them with M.I. Gardener.
So you guys, we hope you enjoyed watching us plant this. I hope you are going to stick around all summer to watch all of these plants come to life. I think that trellis is going to be amazing. How can it not be amazing? If you can walk out and pick tomatoes above your head, come on, that's like a dream come true.
You guys, if you're enjoying videos like this, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. And remember, the best way you can help us here on the homestead is just to share our videos on your social media. Until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care, and God bless.
God bless.